The 2023 draft is now over. All the picks are in. And I want to talk about what the Raiders did and didn't do. So if you joined me in my last video after the first day, you know that the Raiders took Tyree Wilson, and I was not that thrilled about it. But I want to, again, reiterate what I had said in the original video, which is this wasn't so much about Tyree Wilson. I do think he's a great talent and could be something special in the league. He needs some development, though, and I think I think that everyone knows that he's not a polished pass rusher at this point, but he definitely has the skill set to become phenomenal. We'll see. That's kind of going to be a wait and see, and that's kind of was my issue with the whole pick in general. Just to touch on it again, I believe we should have taken Jalen Carter. I still believe we should have taken Jalen Carter. Jalen Carter could have been a difference maker day one, a generational talent. The character concerns, I get it, all that. But, I've been saying this for weeks and weeks and weeks. Jalen Carter was the pick if he was there. The Raiders passed, took Tyree Wilson. The other reason I'm only not 100% bought into the thing, again, is because we're coming into this draft, the three positions we absolutely were in dire need of, the top three, defensive tackle, corner, and linebacker. Really weak, all those rooms. Rooms are all weak. We can't really say we have a frontline difference maker at any of those positions, right? We got some guys that we're hoping they're going to pan out. Duke Shelley we brought in. And we brought in the kid from the Eagles, but he's, again, a strong safety, not going to be a free safety cover type Epps. So I think that there's definitely a big need in those three areas. And you could have got the best player in the draft overall by, most people considered the best player. I know I did consider the best player in the draft at a dire need position. So I know the old adage is you can never have enough pass rushers, and I know that there's some truth to that, but you also got to fill your needs, and this is going to be a theme throughout the Raiders, the whole draft process, on what I think about where we went and the reason I feel that way, and then what my overall grade is. But as we go through each one of these picks, I'm going to tell you what my grade is. My grade on the Tyree Wilson is a B+. A B+ because he is a great player and a great prospect, but not an A because it wasn't a position of need, and he is not as good a player as Jalen Carter. So you could have got a need filled desperately and a transcending generational type player there, and wait and see what he does with the Eagles. Because I promise you, if you're like me, we'll pay attention to this. We'll pay attention to what Jalen Carter's career, how it develops, because it's, unless Tyree Wilson just turns out to be something unbelievable, the next Condor, the next, Joey Bosa or something like that, unless he turns out to be just absolutely phenomenal, and then it's a wash, then okay, then we say, then it really didn't matter. They did what they felt was right. Okay. But if Jalen Carter has his act together, plays up to his potential, balls out, and Tyree Wilson is a rotational player, never developing into being a frontline starter, we're going to pay attention to that. So that's why I gave it a B+. The other thing that kind of bothers me about it is because you got Chandler Jones. I know he just restructured his deal, and they put 3 void years on there. So there's going to be some dead cap money at the end here on Chandler Jones. But the guy still got a bag. And now you basically drafted a position to put this guy into put the guy who you gave the bag to on a rotational play because you drafted another player in that same position. So we'll see how it plays out. It's not a bad player. It just was not the right pick in the right situation. Now, if Jalen Carter was off the board, my feeling about the Tyree Wilson might be a little bit different. But I still might have been a little bit suspect because Christian Gonzalez was there. And corner is a huge need. And we're going to talk about that as we get through the draft. So I think that we're good with you guys all understand where I stand on the Tyree Wilson thing. I think he could be a great player, very high upside. There's no question about it. And I hope he does. But to me, overall, it didn't make a lot of sense given the situation and given the players that were still there. Christian Gonzalez, Jalen Carter were both still there. And I really think those were picks that would have been equally great talents, in Jalen Carter's case, better talent, at a bigger need position. So that's my justification of why I feel like that pick was not the right pick, but still a good player. So we'll see. It's not a terrible Damon Arnett or Garyon Conley reach. So I don't want to try to say it's that. So but that's my feelings on the Tyree Wilson. We will see. So with our next pick, we originally picked him at 38. We decided to jump up to 35. And as soon as we started, as soon as that news broke, right after day 2 started, I just, first of all, I always felt like I wanted Joey Porter Jr. at this point, but I Steelers at the first pick of the second round, it just made too much sense. I never felt like he was going to get past that. So I didn't feel like he was going to be there. But there were still a lot of good defenders in place. And again, we need defense more than any other position. We have brought so much in on offense, spent so much money on offense that, we really need defense. And this next pick is a tricky situation again because, but it's a great player, just not the right situation in my opinion, and that is Michael Mayer. Now, a lot of people, I had him as the number 1 tight end. I think he was my number 2 tight end. But 1, 2, different types of players. He is more of a blocker, and he's still good in the passing game, but he's kind of a good, well-rounded tight end. So I'm not mad at the talent at that level because I do think he was a first-round talent. So going to dropping to 35 was good value. Excuse me. However, we need defense. You drafted defense in the first round, but not a need position. Not a desperate need position, let me say. Not a desperate need position. So we still have got no corner addressed, no linebacker addressed, no defensive tackle addressed. Okay? Still gaping holes in the defense. And taking Mayer there is great value. And for that, I'm going to give it a B because the kid has got really high upside. He's a well-rounded tight end. Tight ends obviously in today's NFL has become a really, really utilized position, a high value position. So I don't hate the pick from that respect. And to me, actually, as we go through, you'll see, in my opinion, it's one of the better picks we've got. Maybe the best pick we've got for value, that is. For value, probably the best pick. But, there were some other players there. And this is why, again, it's a B, because Drew Sanders was there. My top linebacker was there in a desperate need position. Brian Branch was there. Cam Smith was there. 2 corners that I had high grades on. I think they were great corners. Could have been immediate impact players. Could have been immediate fits. So I don't hate the Michael Mayer pick. But it can't be an A because there was top-end talent there at desperate need positions. If you have top-end talent and you have a desperate need, that's the direction you need to go. Now, I know that the Raiders, I'm assuming, the Raiders were probably blown away that he was still there. Now, there's some reports that came out that they were trying to trade back into the first round to draft him in the first round. So they were trying, obviously must have been really high on him. But how many offensive players do we need? We brought in Austin Hooper. You got O.J. Howard. You still have Jesper Horsted. And you have another kid in there. We got players, and Hooper's supposed to be a frontline top, tight end. He's been one of the better ones in the league over the last 4 or 5 years. So, excuse me. Again, Mayer needs to be Kelsey-esque in order for this to really justify itself, because we passed on some top end talent at key positions that we desperately need. again, I can't give it a bad grade, even though we didn't address an immediate, position need per se. Now, I'm not saying we didn't need a tight end at some point, and there was someone super deep tight end class. We could have got one, maybe not to the quality of Mayer, but a quality one later. And at that pick addressed a desperate need position. So that's why, to me, I wasn't hip on that pick, just because I love the player, right? I love the player, but it's just not the right position. I've always felt like Drew Sanders was the right pick if he was there in the second round. I still stand by that. But Cam Smith, Brian Branch would have also been good picks. They could have stayed at 38 as well, by the way. And I know they didn't give up a ton, but they could have stayed at 38 and got some of those players, right? So, they wouldn't have had to give up anything. But again, great talent, super high value. So I can somewhat see why Ziegler and them, felt like that they had to just take the player because the talent was too good. So give them a little bit of a pass on this one, though I don't think it was the best decision for the team overall. But we'll see what happens in the long run and go from there. Moving on to the next round. Now, when we get into the third round here, pick number 70, this is where I feel like things started to kind of really go off track, in my opinion. And this is where, hey, Tyree Wilson, maybe I wanted Jalen Carter. Okay. I wanted Drew Sanders in the second round. We got Michael Mayer, but great play. Okay, so we move on, all right? But we still haven't addressed the needs. So at number 70, we get a defensive tackle. They drafted defensive tackle. But they draft Byron Young from Alabama, and not the Byron Young from Tennessee. So let's make sure we don't confuse those two, But Byron Young from Alabama, not a great player. I mean, he's okay for, I think, 4-year starter at Alabama. I know that says something, but Siaka Ika, I liked better than this guy. I don't know a whole lot about him, but it's just not that productive and not that great. And again, I'm going to go back to the same problem we had with the Michael Mayer pick. But this situation is different because I don't think Byron Young is a great player. So he's not, the biggest problem with Byron Young is he doesn't generate much pass rush at all. He's a run stopper, and we already have the run stoppers. We needed a defensive tackle that could put pressure up the middle. That's what we needed. We didn't need someone who could stop the run. Great, he could stop the run. Fantastic. You do need those guys, but we needed a front line guy on those long yardage situations, third down situations, where we could put some pressure up the middle. Because we're getting nothing. And unless they bring out some kind of metamorphosis in this guy, he hasn't shown that he's got, great pass rush skills. He had some sacks. But if you look at a lot of those sacks are cleanup sacks from Will Anderson putting crazy pressure on the edge, and it's just funneling to him. So the sack count and quarterback pressures are a little deceiving because a lot of it, and I mean a lot of it, was due to outside pressure, funneling into him, things like that. So I don't think he's a great player. I think this was a reach at this. I think they could have got this guy a lot lower. But when you still had players like Riley Moss there, right, cornerback, we still had Deion Henley, linebacker. And the player that I wanted him to pick, that I was like, hey, this will be a pretty good fit here, was Trenton Simpson. I thought he could go. The Broncos had just taken Drew Sanders right before us, a few picks, so that sucked. He was off the board. But Trenton Simpson was there, and I think he's a good player. I think he would have fit a really big need, and he, I thought that was going to be a good option to get there. So wasn't thrilled with that. My grade on the defensive tackle, number 70, Byron Young, I'm giving that a C. So look, A is a home run. B is a good pick. Okay. C is average, slightly below average maybe. D is, terrible pick. F is, what were you thinking? So now we move on to our next pick in the third round. Our next pick in the third round, this was an absolute head scratcher. So we got Jakobi Meyers. We still have Hunter Renfrow. We'll talk about that later. We got, Philip Dorsett. We got, obviously, Davante Adams. We got I can't forget the guy's name we got from the Chargers. We got a lot of receivers in the room. And these guys are supposed to be contributors. We've paid most of these guys. Some of the guys have 1-2-year deals, but we have several, paid players in this unit. And with the next pick, they take Tre Turner, wide receiver from Cincinnati. Tre Tucker, I'm sorry, Tucker, not Turner. Tre Tucker from Cincinnati. I mean, come on. First of all, this kid's 5'8", $188 or whatever, gadget player, not, what's he going to do? Are you expecting this to be Tyreek Hill? Is that the thought process here? What, be a special teamer? Well, that's what they got the kid from the Chargers for. We got Renfrow for that. Now, again, I'll mention Renfrow here in a minute after we talk about this, but this was a terrible pick in my opinion. I also think this player could have been picked maybe even a whole another round lower, maybe 2 rounds lower. I don't think he needed to be picked here. So this was a reach in a position we don't have a need, even a mild need, honestly. We didn't need this player. Don't give me this whole we needed speed. We brought Jakobi Meyers in and Philip Dorsett and shit in for that. And the kid from the Chargers, they all can run. We didn't need the speed. So this pick made no sense to me, and I gave this pick a D. I didn't give it an F all the way, but a D. Just didn't make no sense. This is a terrible pick in my opinion. No offense to the kid. I know it's the best day of his life, and I don't want to take it away from that. But from the Raiders' perspective, this was a terrible pick in my opinion. I don't see it. So, again, Riley Moss is still there. Deion Henley and Trenton Simpson all still there when we picked both Byron Young and Tre Tucker. Positions of need. Good players at positions of need. And we pass and reach on some guys. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I don't know. It's why do we want to McDaniels again? Listen, I only thing you could think of is that McDaniels wants to make sure that the offense is buzzing and humming, and it's not the reason the Raiders lose. And then no matter how the season goes, he can always tell Mark Davis, "Hey, it was the defense's fault, and let me get a new defensive coordinator. We'll start over on that side of the ball. Give me another year or two." And I think that's probably a valid theory, or at least it feels like a valid theory at this point. So we'll see how that develops. But a D on this one. Don't like the pick. Not a great pick at all. So next pick, 4th round. We take Jakorian Bennett, cornerback, Maryland. Now, this is a pretty decent pick in my opinion. Again, we go back to, it only took him to the 4th round well, I guess technically in the 3rd round, but to the 4th round to get a high need position and a pretty good player at that position. Again, I go back to the Byron Young. I don't think a great player, okay player, not a great player. Jakorian Bennett is a good player with a lot of upside, good in man coverage, not so great in the zone, but good in man coverage. And we play a man coverage scheme. So I think this could be a good fit. I think this is a good player and a pretty decent value there at 104. So I'm giving this one a B plus grade. I think this is, or B minus, B plus, B grade, whatever. So that's a good pick, I think. I think that was this is a pick that I'm okay. Hey, this was a decent pick here. With the next pick 135, the Raiders traded up from 144. So they traded their pick 144, which would have been in the 5th round, back up into the 4th round, pick 135, to take Aidan O'Connell, quarterback, Purdue. Just look him up. The stats are not fantastic. There's nothing spectacular about the kid. He does not have a big arm. He is not mobile. But McDaniels loves the guy, tries to compare him to Tom Brady. I don't think so. I don't see it. I don't think it. Again, not a high need position. You could have just got someone later. At that time, when they picked Aidan O'Connell, they still had Kai Blue Kelly was still there. Jamie Robinson, a safety who I really like. And again, another position of need, because I didn't say safety at the beginning, but safety room's weak too. So that would have been another, person that we could have got that at good value that fits a bigger need. I'm not a big fan of Aidan O'Connell. Not a big fan of the pick. It didn't suit me well. So C- grade for me. Very close to complete fail. I didn't complete fail it because the only reason my justification for not completely failing it is probably a better option than Brian Hoyer. So probably a better option than Brian Hoyer, but there's nothing spectacular about Aidan O'Connell. If you've had your hopes up, just go look at some tape. Look at his touchdown interception ratio. Watch him try to run and move around. Not dynamic at all. Does not have a big arm. Nothing special about this kid. I mean, again, I don't want to take it away from the kid. I'm sure he's excited. Hey, welcome to the Raiders. But from a Raiders perspective, again, still haven't addressed a lot of the needs. Got one corner. And a defensive tackle who's not the type of defensive tackle we needed. So, I don't know. Not a great pick to me. Again, I C- on that one. Pick 170, safety Cam Smith out of Georgia. So, up and down on this kid. Not a great athlete. If you look at his short shuttle is 40. All the measurables. Not a great athlete. Plays better than those numbers. So, I think an okay pickup here. I can't remember what I graded. C. I believe I gave it a C. So C grade, maybe a B-, but I'm not crazy about it, but I don't hate it. So we'll see what he develops. I know that there's some other people out there like Mo Moten loved this pick, but I think he's okay. But I don't love him. Carl Brooks was there still, defensive tackle. I love Carl Brooks. Tre'Vius Hodges Tomlinson. I'm big on that guy. I know he's smaller. Would have been another corner, and I think he would have been a good fit for us. So, I would have liked to have had that kid. So there's two players that I think I would have picked over Christopher Smith, but B-, C+ grade on that one for me. So kind of eh. Then we get into the 6th round. Amari Burney, linebacker out of Florida. Nothing special here. Don't know a lot about the guy. Of course, after they made the pick, I went and looked around, did some research, looking him up. But I gave it a C grade because they can't really be complete fails at this point. That's mainly the reason, because at this point you're looking for, at 6th to 7th round, you're hoping you find some gem, but you're looking at special teams players, people who contribute in other ways, rotational depth pieces. So both of these picks, in the 6th to 7th round, I didn't give horrible grades to, just because there wasn't, you can't really completely grade it out. But a player I really liked was here in this place for both this pick and for our 7th round pick, and that was Corey Trice. Another pretty good corner. I think that, could have fit with us, and I like the kid. So, unfortunately, no corner. So, in the 7th round, pick 231, they took defensive tackle Nesta, Jade, Silvera. So, I don't know much out of Arizona. I know he spent most of his career he spent with I want to say, I'd have to look it up, but he finished his career with Arizona State. And I think he's a fifth-year senior. Nothing great here. A run stuffer, not a guy who's going to get penetration. So a rotational piece, a flyer, I think. So, again, a C grade, nothing special, nothing really bad. But the theme of this draft, to me, is can we walk away right now and say that we are closer to, stopping the Chiefs on defense? I don't see how you could say you are. Well, okay, you say Tyree Wilson. He's going to get in there. He's going to rotate plays with Chandler Jones, and he still needs development. The other thing with Tyree Wilson you have to understand is he played against lesser talented offensive linemen. Okay, this is the NFL now. Okay, he relies basically on a swim move and speed. That's not enough in the NFL. Sorry, I've had a cold. That's not enough in the NFL. It's not ever going to be enough. So how quick can he develop those? I don't know. But to think he's just going to all of a sudden make us closer to stopping the Chiefs, I don't think, at least right now, I don't think that moves the needle that much. Michael Mayer, we'll see what happens on the offense. But the other defensive players, I think, Jakorian Bennett is the only player I think who could be a starter pretty much right away. And that's the reason is because our cornerback room is really weak and really thin, and I think he might be able to come in and play. Overall, my grade for the Raiders in this whole draft is a C. It's not the worst draft. It's not the Cleveland Farrell draft, the Jakorian Connolly type picks. So, the worst pick, Tre Tucker, in my opinion, and the best pick value-wise, I believe, is Michael Mayer. The best player they picked, I believe Tyree Wilson is the best talented player. But Michael Mayer is the best value there at 35. He was definitely better than the 35th best player. But we'll see how it pans out. Listen, the truth is we can grade, prognosticators can grade, but half the league's made up of UDFAs. So no one really knows. No one really knows how good or bad your draft is, until a few years down the road. It's a lot sooner when you know how bad it is. But to determine how good a draft is, 2 or 3 years. So we don't know. But the key to me is I felt like with the way the Raiders approached free agency and didn't do much on defense, that they really needed to nail the draft and absolutely murder it, especially on the defensive side, and get 3 or 4 starters to really nail the draft. And I don't think we accomplished that. Straight up. I think Mayer could be a starter. I don't think you could qualify Tyree Wilson as a starter because I think he will rotate with Jones. And Jakorian Bennett's the only other player I think could possibly be a starter. Everyone else they're going to have to work their way on the team, and that's not what we were looking for and not what this was set up to be. The way they approached the free agency, not paying the contracts, not pursuing big-time players, they're going to need to get creative. Maybe trade Hunter Renfrow, and let's talk about that, is I do think that the Tre Tucker thing signals even more, which there already were a lot of signals, that Hunter Renfrow's not going to be on the team. Whether they trade him before the June 1st time frame or he's a post-June 1st cut, either way, I think he's not a Raider. And don't be surprised if he don't turn up in New Orleans. That's the spot, I think, for him. Reuniting with Carr, that's what I think is going to happen. But we'll see how it all plays out. But tell me what you think. Give me your grade. Give me your thoughts on my grades of the pick. I'm not perfect. That's just my observations. We can all disagree, and that's great. But hey, like, subscribe. Hit that notification bell. We appreciate you stopping in with us, and we'll hit you next time.